I'm Councilmember Cam Gordon, Chair of the committee. I'm joined today by Councilmember Schrader, Councilmember Bender, and Councilmember Goodman. We have a quorum of a committee, so we can start our meeting and conduct our business. The meeting has 4 items on the agenda. We have a public hearing for land sale, 1 consent item, and 2 discussion items. Maybe I'll just move our consent item first. This is an agreement with Affordable Housing Connections for home monitoring consulting services. Do any committee members want to pull that off the agenda for discussion? Then I'll ask all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Consent agenda passes. And now we'll go to our first item, which is the public hearing, land sale at 3210 Morgan Avenue North. And maybe Ms. Coleman wants to just set us up very, very briefly with what this is. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Gordon and members of the committee. I'm Erica Coleman. I'm a senior project coordinator with CPID Housing. So today, staff is recommending sale of 3210 Morgan Avenue North through the Minneapolis Homes program. Policies for the program were established by the City Council on December 11, 2015, and on February 10, 2017. Staff recommends the sale of 3210 Morgan Avenue North to Jenny Investments, LLC for its appraised value of $34,000, subject to conditions. 3210 Morgan Avenue North was acquired from Hennepin County tax forfeited land for $1. Staff marketed this property with an open house held on October 2017 and with notifications sent to a listserv of over 1,900 prospective developers and home buyers. There were 2 applications received. CTW Group was the other applicant. Based on program criteria stated in our Minneapolis Homes program manual, we use that to evaluate all offers received. Jenny Investments is recommended as the purchaser. CTW Group is not recommended as an alternate purchaser at this time. To evaluate responsibility, staff consulted with Department of Regulatory Services staff to verify the status of any vacant buildings, rental properties, and/or any other properties owned by the prospective purchaser in the city of Minneapolis. There were no concerns. The property was constructed in 1939 as a 1,176 finished square foot, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, single-family house. The purchaser intends to invest $147,300 to rehabilitate 3210 Morgan Avenue North into a 1,500 finished square foot, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, single-family home to be sold exclusively to owner occupants. CPED's construction management staff reviewed the scope of work and estimates that were submitted by the applicant and confirmed that the scope of work and estimates are sufficient to meet the minimum rehabilitation standards of the Minneapolis Homes program. Notification was provided to the Falwell neighborhood on November 22nd, 2017. They recommended Jenny Investments, LLC. Are there any questions?
I don't see any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that report. And now we'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this matter? Anyone here? Seeing no one, then I'll close the public hearing. Any questions committee members have? Seeing none, then I will move approval of this land sale. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? That motion carries. Then we're ready to move on to our discussion items. And the first item has to do with Minnehaha Townhomes. And this is approving a supplemental award. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Gordon and committee members. My name is Angie Skildum. I'm the manager of Residential Finance Division team at CPED, and I'm here today to present the staff recommendation for a supplemental award of $240,000 from the Family Housing Initiative Program for Minnehaha Townhomes. This project, Minnehaha Townhomes, is an important and unique public-public partnership between the city, the county, the state, and importantly, the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority as project developer to construct 16 affordable housing units for some of the city's most vulnerable households, families that are homeless and coming out of shelter. This project will serve very large families with primarily 3-bedroom and some 2-bedroom units. As a region, we've had an extremely difficult time housing this population and are well behind on our ending homelessness goals. So just to orient you, there's a slide on your screen that highlights the project location at 54th and Riverview Road in Ward 12. This is a non-concentrated area of the city that will offer families expanded locational choice in their housing, as well as access to light rail and bus transit, parks, schools, jobs, and other amenities. The city previously supported this project with an $800,000 award from the Family Housing Initiative in 2016. Subsequent to that time, the project experienced significant cost overruns. These were due, in part, to the late discovery of unstable soils on the site and both exterior facade upgrades and stormwater requirements of the city of Minneapolis. MPHA has taken their role as developer very seriously, bringing on a new architect to redesign the project to reduce costs, new experienced consulting expertise, and assigning new internal project management staff. They have been able to significantly reduce the project gap through these efforts, but a gap does remain. This slide shows you the new site plan and highlights for you, I think, the community scale of this project that transitions from the existing senior high-density building, which is the kind of L-shaped gray building on the backside of the site, through the transition through the townhouse units that are colored, and then out until the surrounding single-family homes. The proximity to this senior building also offers unique intergenerational opportunities for residents of both projects. And here's an elevation that shows the property from the front, looking from the northeast. Staff understands that this recommendation for supplemental funds is a big ask on a per unit basis for this project. Paired with the original award, this request will bring the total city grant support to $65,000 per unit, which does exceed the normal Family Housing Initiative limit of $50,000 per unit. But staff is recommending that you authorize this special award under the same model of the council-created contingency pool in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, which allows up to an additional $15,000 per unit to projects that are similarly stuck in the development pipeline. The Family Housing Fund, or the Family Housing Initiative, account has a high program balance right now due to staff's inability to recommend those funds for other projects due to program rules. In fact, this project is the first of several projects that staff will be bringing forward to this committee in the coming months to creatively utilize the Family Housing Initiative funds to address the severe shortage of 3-bedroom units at 30% of AMI here in the city. So this final award will position Minnehaha Townhomes, a critically needed project with strong and vocal neighborhood support, to close and start construction this summer. And a final word about the unique partnership that we have with MPHA. The permanent operating subsidy that they bring to this project ensures not just long-term, but in fact permanent affordability for these units. MPHA is committing over $850,000 of their own equity to the project, something that is highly unusual for nonprofit partners. And despite the fact that they qualify under program rules for over $600,000 in developer fee, they are taking no developer fee at all. The total focus of this project is to construct a high-quality community asset that will remain permanently affordable to help address our community goals around addressing family homelessness. With that, I'd like to note that representatives from the Minneapolis Public Housing Authority, Executive Director Greg Russ, Deputy Executive Director Tracy Scott, and Director of Planning and Development Laura Dykema, thanks. Don't want to mispronounce that, are in the audience today, as is David Hewitt, who is the manager of the Hennepin County, Minneapolis Office to End Homelessness. And I can take any questions that you'd like to direct to me or to any of them. Would be happy to speak to the project as well.
I don't see, I see a question or a comment from Councilmember Goodman.
Hi.
Hi.
The set aside for family housing is a set aside within the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, correct?
Yes, it's a separately allocated budget.
So this money could be used for any project that would be eligible for the trust fund. So it's not difficult to use. It's difficult because we set it aside for this purpose, correct?
Right, it comes with program rules that restrict it to the 30% AMI 3-bedroom units.
Right, but we could, if there weren't enough projects, we certainly could just put it, to eliminate those rules, put it back in the trust fund and build more units because we're not exceeding the per unit cost, correct?
Yes, the council could take that action. We will be recommending some changes to the program rules in the upcoming round to make it more flexible, but still keep it focused on those very low-income 3-bedroom units, but that's a conversation that we can have.
So, Mr. Chair, I actually support the staff recommendation. I told Andrea this before, but I don't think it would be correct to suggest that, oh, there's so much money in this fund, we should just give them more per unit. There's a reason we say there's a limit per unit, and that's to build more. And all we need to do is say it's not going to be used for this purpose, but any other project at 30 and 50%. And there's lots of those in the pipeline too that meet our requirements. The reason I think this is different is because they're not taking a developer fee, which is a really big sticking point with me, that we're in the process of developing a new and positive relationship with MPHA and working jointly with them on our Section 8 ordinance, and they've been nothing other than completely cooperative in trying to get us through this litigation and to try to deal with the inspections issues. And maybe most importantly, this is in a non-impacted area and a very nice portion of town where people will choose to live, and Section 8 renters should be able to live anywhere they want. So I do support that staff recommendation, but I want to remind us that this is not a precedent, in my opinion, for going above the per limit cost on this or any other project, because our thing is about building units, not about paying more to build less units.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I have a question. I know that their MPHA has constructed some senior public housing in the last 10 years, but I'm not sure if I know of any new projects of new family public housing that have been built in the city since I first was elected to the council. Can you tell us when the last, or?
Sorry.
Yeah, I said non-senior. I was curious about family public housing.
I'm not aware of any.
Okay, so this is a,
Yeah, the federal government has largely pulled back from providing capital to the public housing authorities around the country for construction. So they have operating resources, in this case, special resources through their fair cloth authorization to provide services, support services, but there's not resources available for the capital construction costs. That's why we have this unique public partnership in this case.
yeah, I just think this is kind of an historic step that we're seeing take here, and it's a big deal. I'm wondering if anybody from MPHA would like to say a few things, Mr. Russ or somebody, give you a chance to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the committee for the opportunity. I do want to call out our partners. This has just been a tremendous effort as we try to put these units in the ground. And just to reemphasize here today that we feel that there'll be more things coming like this, where we're looking at either rejiggering the units that we have in some way, but attaching wherever we can this very deep subsidy that allows us to reach down to the very low end of the income spectrum. So we appreciate very much the city's support and the monetary contribution. And in exchange, we feel we can bring the kind of subsidy that we've all been talking about for the folks who are 30% and below. And we think this kind of model is one that we could replicate elsewhere, including in our scattered site portfolio when we come time to revisit that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions or comments. I will note that, I see one. I'll note that Councilmember Johnson spoke with me before the meeting, and he's the 12th Ward council member. I've met him before. I'm sure, and he wanted to let me know how supportive he was of this, and that he couldn't be here necessarily to speak on its behalf, but he was supportive. Councilmember Bender.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to briefly note that I'm supportive as well of the staff recommendation, and I see some of our partners here that sit at the Heading Home Hennepin table. What we've learned in the brief amount of time I've been involved in the work of our partnership to make homelessness as brief and as possible, a temporary condition for folks is that when we really put resources towards solving a problem, that's when we start to see movement on our numbers. And as a state, we were able to put a lot of resources and attention into veterans homelessness and made huge results. And now there's a lot of shift in focus to families. And as staff noted, we just really don't have the landing place for our families. And we see so much impact of that in our school system where a large percent of our students, I think it's 8%, are homeless or highly mobile. We see those impacts in our schools. I have a dream that near our public community schools, we would have this kind of housing in every neighborhood where low-income families could live within walking distance of a great public school. I think this is a great model, and I'm, like I said, just wanted to voice my support.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further comments or questions, then I will move approval of authorizing this supplemental award for Minneapolis Public Housing Authority or its affiliate at Minnehaha Townhomes project. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. Abstentions? That motion carries. Then we have our final item before us. And this is, it's a contract amendment for Homeline, but we thought this would be a good opportunity for us to get some information as a committee and maybe an update on what Homeline's work has been and some of the metrics for the last year. So we'll let staff lead it off. Welcome, Noreen. I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name. Shihavong?
Pretty close. Sihavong.
Okay. That was close.
Good afternoon, Committee Chair Gordon and council members. My name is Noreen Sihavong. I'm a CPED contract coordinator. So I'm here to present the RCA for the contract amendment with Homeline for legal services to Minneapolis renters and authorizing an increase of $100,000 to an existing contract for a new total of $400,000 and authorizing an extension to the same contract from the end date of December 31st, 2017 to December 31st, 2018. So some background information. The contract originated in 2015 through regulatory services. It was a $100,000 contract with Homeline to provide free legal services for such as evictions, leases, security deposit issues to Minneapolis renters in English, Spanish, and Somali via phone, email, and distribution of applicable material. And then the following year in 2016, regulatory services again received $100,000 to continue the contract. And at the same time, it received approval from the Permanent Review Committee to waive the contract from going through the request for a proposal process, mainly because Homeline is a fairly unique organization that provides services that work across the lines with many organizations. They do even receive referrals from legal aid for client services. And at the same time, in 2016, the City Council approved the $100,000 for the contract extension for a new total of $200,000. In 2017, regulatory services again went through the same process, received another $100,000 to extend the contract, and received another approval to waive the contract through the RFP process from the PRC. And then recently, in February 8, CPED has taken over the contract from regulatory services and sought the approval to waive the RFP process and received the approval from the Permanent Review Committee. And so we're here today to ask for another extension from the City Council for $100,000 and to extend the contract to December 31st, 2018 for Homeline.
I have a small question, just in terms of what our practices are about waiving RFPs. I'm going off of requests for proposals make sense. I know that a lot of our general practices are that we force ourselves to do it, so to speak, every once in a while. How long could this be waived into the future? Or is there a guideline that will tell us we should go out for one, or is that something at our discretion? And maybe we
that's
don't know.
something,
Maybe somebody else
Andrea?
knows.
Hi, sure. Hi, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I believe that it is something that is discretionary. It has to meet certain criteria. There has to be a good reason for it, in other words, and we believe that we know that there aren't other nonprofit organizations that can handle the same level of volume that we really need for services for Minneapolis renters outside of Homeline. So we know that we've talked informally to other organizations that are nonprofits that do provide tenant services, and all of them agree that the organization that really is qualified in terms of meeting the different language requirements and having the capacity to meet the volume that we need is Homeline. So I don't think that there is a limit on the extension, but we will certainly look into that and verify that.
And I appreciate that. Sometimes we do requests for qualifications to do a more formal check-in to find out what's out there. I'm not suggesting we do that now necessarily, just reading the report and noticing what a long-term relationship we've had with the organization. And I'm sure we're going to find out they've done some fabulous work too. So I just wanted to bring that up so I was clear on it myself.
okay,
Thank you.
if there are no more questions, I'd like to bring Eric Howie from Homeline up to present more information about his organization.
Wonderful.
And there's a PowerPoint that's going to be pulled up also.
I'll get started. Chair Gordon and members of the committee. Again, my name is Eric Howie. I'm with Homeline. I'm also a Minneapolis resident. Homeline is located at 3455 Bloomington Avenue in Minneapolis, but we are a statewide nonprofit organization. We serve renters throughout the state. All right, thank you. So I think most of you are familiar with the organization, but I'm going to quickly just run through some key items and then talk a little bit about the services that we provided last year to Minneapolis renters. Again, our primary program and the core service that the city of Minneapolis helps resource is our tenant hotline. It's a free and confidential legal hotline that renters can call or access via email on our website. We have 15 employees, 6 of whom are attorneys and a variety of other tenant advocates, and we serve folks in English, Spanish, and Somali. We are in the midst of seeking funding to add Hmong language capacity as well. So how do you reach Homeline? There's our number, 728-5767, or on our website. We have a lot of resources, and people can email us. I think in Minneapolis, we get about 86% either in-person or phone consultations, and about 14% over email. We do a lot of coordination with 311, Reg Services, Legal Aid, Volunteer Lawyers Network, and a variety of neighborhood associations and other renter rights organizations. And we also have done a lot of trainings for neighborhoods, tenants, and we do regular landlord education courses in our offices every month. So last year in 2017, we served just under 3,000 renter households in Minneapolis. Statewide, it's around 15,000 that we serve. So the bulk of our services in the metro area, and particularly in Minneapolis. The costs associated with that service, with our tenant hotline service, again, that's just providing basic, quick, free, legal, confidential advice over the phone, was about $129,000. So we fully appreciate the support that we get from the city of Minneapolis and the track record we've had in the city. And we have served residents in Minneapolis since 2014 when we expanded. But just so you know, there's costs associated with that, and not covering the entire cost. It also doesn't cover other services that we provide, some of those education services and other types of outreach. We do spend an average of about a half an hour with each client, but that varies widely. If somebody's facing an eviction, we may have them come in, do a consultation, spend a lot more time reviewing documents. Other people are calling us asking, how do I get my renter's credit back? That's a really quick response there. So just a little bit of information about, this is demographics of our clients just last year in 2017 and just in Minneapolis. So predominantly, as you can see, predominantly female clients, people of color. I don't have the stats for families with kids, but we do serve many families with kids, and we can run those numbers. And then despite not having any sort of, we don't restrict based on income limits or issue. We'll advise any renter about any issue as long as there's not a conflict of interest. The vast majority, 85%, are low-income households under HUD guidelines. So you can take a look and see just the numbers of families served by ward here. And just one quick note, Chair Gordon, our numbers are a little low in your ward, and that's because we have a relationship with University Student Legal Services. We do a lot of referrals to them. University students are paying for that service as students, so that's. And then this is sort of the last slide here, just really basic rundown of some of the issues that we advise about. We try to, with 3,000 calls in Minneapolis, not every call is as simple as repairs, which is number one. Things are very complicated in many of these consultations, but we try to categorize the types of issues that we advise about into about 50 categories. And so this is just an outline of, in 2017, what some of the common legal topics that we advise folks about. So I'll just note number 1 and number 6, repairs and infestations, bed bugs, are very, legally speaking, an issue that we advise about very commonly, and it's similar advice on both ends. It also frequently involves us referring to 311 to reg services so that residents are getting the inspections that they need too. And then I know that a couple weeks ago, as you can see, number 3 on the list is eviction, as well as number 4, notice to vacate. Those are important distinctions in terms of formal eviction actions in the court that we're advising about, and then notices to vacate or perhaps lease non-renewals that are not necessarily at that level where somebody is facing a formal court eviction. But I know a couple weeks ago that the innovation team did a presentation about evictions. And so you can see, we did advise a good number of people. We know we refer a lot of low-income families to legal aid to try to get representation, but it's like something like 3,000 evictions in the city every year. So we're just touching on it, and so there's really a need for more legal services and support for renters there. So yeah, that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I think we have some questions. Councilmember Schrader.
I want to say, thank you. First, as a kind of side note, I do want to, I agree with the chair's questioning of just the contracts. And this is a completely side note, kind of separate of this individual contract. I think as an issue of transparency, we should be going out. But that issue aside, I just want to thank you for the phenomenal work that Home Warning does for the city.
Thank you.
Councilmember Bender, did you have a question?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to note that we've unanimously supported this funding for Homeline since 2014, and it was one of the very first things I did on the budget as a council member representing a ward that's 80% renter. The service is critical to my ward, and I think we see high numbers from the 10th ward and the 5th ward, where they're just places where there's just a lot going on in our renter populations. In my ward, we're seeing rent increases and instability in housing as rents rise. And we've learned a lot from our eviction study and the work with our partners, Homeline and Legal Aid and the other organizations working with renters, about why people are getting evicted in our city and the dramatic lifelong consequences that an eviction filing has on someone's record. And I just wanted to note that the work that Homeline is doing on the front end, even just advising people about their rights if their landlord isn't keeping up with maintenance or repair, helping us refine and give feedback on our rental tiered system and the policies and procedures that we have as a city and how we're doing inspections. All of that, I think, is making an impact on people's day-to-day lives, and it's really important. And it's doing it in a way that's avoiding some of these more disruptive things like a formal eviction. So I think the work is really important. We also noted yesterday in a meeting with Legal Aid, Councilmember Ellison and I, that we don't really have anyone in the city staff, like in our city enterprise, whose job it is to like look out for renters. We have lots of staff who are doing things related to that work, but there's no one who I think would, and maybe there is, and I'm not thinking of it, but who would sort of imagine as their client or their the 51% of people in our city who are renters. And I think that's another place where Homeline and organizations like it are filling that gap. So I think we get a lot of return on this relatively small financial investment. So thank you for the work and for being here today.
Thank you.
And I've certainly noticed a significant difference from when we weren't funding Homeline and you weren't helping us and working on this, and that you have been. And I think you do fill a niche and do a great service for us. I have one little question, partly because I've got one of the more famous public housing areas in my ward. I think currently famous anyway, locally famous. And public housing was here. And I was wondering, and I'm also, it's complicated in Ward 2 because I do have lots of student housing. And if they're a student at the U, they're paying for legal services. And I'm just wondering, when you say all renters, does that include public housing residents? And so they can call and they can get legal advice from you as well.
Chair Gordon, yes, we will serve any renter. The only sort of conflicts that sometimes arise are with if we've advised a roommate or a neighbor. That being said, folks that are in public housing, we will definitely advise. We will frequently also refer to legal aid because they definitely will, in most cases, qualify for their services depending on the issue. But yes, we'll definitely advise them about any issue. Public housing, I think any type of subsidized housing.
Could landlords call and get an opinion if they're wondering about what legalities are? Or
that would definitely be a conflict of interest. So we do get a lot of calls from landlords, and so we'll refer to Minnesota Multi-Housing or other resources. That being said, we do offer general education classes. So we're one of the organizations that the city has sort of authorized as doing landlord training. So landlords can come to our training and then get a reduction in licensing fee for rental conversion fees. So we do get quite a good number of Minneapolis landlords that we're helping to educate, at least. Not about a specific legal situation, no.
Excellent. Also, one of the council is going to be taking up an ordinance amendment to conduct on premises ordinance that we have. Is that something that you might have some knowledge about, that you could be helpful in how we're looking at that ordinance, or is that something outside of what you usually deal with?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Actually, I think it was just yesterday, or is it one? Yeah, yesterday. I had an opportunity to, some of our staff had an opportunity to meet with, or maybe it was earlier this week, with some folks from the Office for Police Conduct to discuss some concerns that we've had with the conduct on premise and the unintended consequences it may have on renters and their ability and wishes to access police services. So yes, definitely have voiced our opinion about that.
Well, I think one of the things that this committee is going to be working on in the months ahead is a lot of issues around tenant protections, tenant rights. I know a lot of the ideas that come forward have to do with that, and I think that you and your staff and the expertise that you have in that area will be very valuable to us. So hopefully we'll be able to find time, maybe not always within your contract, but to get some other help as we start crafting policy.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Did you want to add something?
Yes, if I may,
Yeah, of
Mr.
course.
Chair, members of the committee, wanted to add, since Eric mentioned that there's a need for additional legal services, especially for very low-income renters, that where Homeline has identified that they may have a legal case. The city council did approve $150,000 in the 2018 budget. So we are preparing to go out for a request for qualifications or request for proposals for those legal services. So once we receive them and have a staff recommendation, we will be back before you requesting approval for a contract to expand legal services to low-income tenants.
Wonderful. Councilmember Reich.
Oh, just a quick question on that note. So will that selection be in consultation with Homeland of the legal?
Mr. Chair,
awardee?
Councilmember Reich, yes.
Okay.
Okay, I don't see any other questions or comments. I'm happy to move this unless anybody else wants to. All right, well, I will move then approving the contract amendment with Homeline. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Any abstentions? That motion carries. And seeing no further business before us, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.